Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
From her rich and fertile valleys to the shores of her icy seas, from her fields and farms and shellfish beds and her many nurseries, for the finest of her flavor, for the freshest by far, choose the things Alaskans bring to the market where you are. Products that we're proud to call our own, and it's all Alaska grown.
The National Weather Service.
Hey, good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on the 2nd of August. My goodness, the month of July went by fast, and if you haven't checked out some of the latest climate stats around Alaska for July, you should do that. You can easily do that on our Facebook page at NWS Alaska there. And our climate expert, which you may have seen on the show, Rick Toman, talks about a lot of the stats for places like Bethel and Anchorage and Kenai, all the way down into southeastern Alaska, the North Slopes included, and of course the interior there, not only with record high temperatures on average, but also rainfall and overnight low temperatures that are warmer than normal. All of this has played into perhaps the warmest July on record for Alaska again. So be sure and check that out if you haven't. Again, that's on our Facebook page at NWS Alaska. You can always call the weather info line at 800-472-0391. Find us on our website, weather.gov/Alaska. And if you're on our new websites and you're still having trouble, we understand. But let me know. Send me an email at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov and I'll reply. I'll be glad to guide you through finding what you need, whether it's just the text version of the forecast that you're looking for, or you just can't find the weather tools that you are used to using anymore. Be happy to help you out anytime. Here's a look at what's going on across the region. We are still looking at flood advisories around the Tanana River. We had a good deal of rainfall from late last week in through the weekend, and as such, the rivers are slowly receding, but we're not quite away from that flooding or that low-level flooding just yet. So as we go through the next several days there, the flood advisory may still stand, but it looks like most of the main stem rivers there are receding as we go ahead into the mid part of the week. Keep in mind, though, that some of the trails that you use and certainly a road or two could be near water or have some water flowing over it and might even still come up in a couple places. Remember your safety rules. Turn around, don't drown. We never want to cross flooded roadways, especially ones with water moving over them. Sometimes you don't know how deep that water is, and it doesn't take a whole lot more than 1 foot to 2 feet of water that can sweep you and your vehicle away. There are no vehicles that float, except for ducks, and even those duck boats sometimes go down. So just be careful out there. Flood advisories continue in through the midweek for the interior and downstream from Fairbanks. Here's a look at the fire danger, and high fire danger is a lot more spotty than it was just a couple weeks ago. North of the Yukon Valley on the south slopes of the Brooks Range and around Arctic Village and west, and into the upper Tanana Valley, as well as areas in the Copper River Basin, still looking at elevated high fire danger. And the same goes for areas around Haines. But I have to say the numbers are considerably lower than they were just weeks ago when we were still talking about high to even extreme fire danger. And the good news is, if you're tired of higher fire danger, and many folks around Steamboat Fire, among others, certainly are, it does look like there are many more waves of rain working their way in from west to southwest and in through the interior as we go through the remainder of this week and probably more to come. So, the days are getting shorter, the weather's turning rainier for many, and the leaves are starting to lose their color a little bit. Smell that? It smells like winter a little bit, doesn't it? Sorry, I won't say that anymore. Here's a look at the low pressure system moving across the northern Gulf and right around the Kenai Peninsula. You can see the center of circulation there that brought some rain through a large part of south central earlier today. Another part of that system is working its way in through southeastern Alaska. Had a lot of dry air still across southeast today, some spotty areas of light rain, but the bulk of that moisture is still approaching the panhandle here. As you look at the interior, a lot of cloud cover and areas of rain, but the bulk of the rainfall was still out across the west today. That associated with another impulse of wetter weather that was stretching from St. Lawrence Island in through the Norton Sound. You can kind of see some of those brighter white clouds here stretching from Nome all the way to almost Arctic Village here. Out across the west, a lot of gray skies and clouds and mist there. As you look at the infrared satellite picture, you can see another wave of low pressure working its way up across the central and eastern Aleutians. That will start to gather up more moisture, working that in across southwestern Alaska, eventually south central, and it will also take over a large part of the interior as we go into the next several days. And of course, southeast will get your fair share of wet weather coming your way. But several waves of these are lined up out across the west, and I believe the forecasters at the Anchorage office today counted something on the order of about 6. So we've moved from a fairly inactive summer, very warm and dry, to the typical wetter early fall-like weather coming our way. Here's a look at the weather chart now. Cold air is trying to work its way southward once again. Out ahead of that, you can see kind of the bubbles and the small dots of clouds. Those are, of course, cumulus clouds. The bubbling up of convection allows those showers and sometimes thunderstorms to form. And there may be another chance of those as we head into tomorrow afternoon, mainly around the Alcan border from Eagle down to Northway. For southeast, generally dry conditions today, but a front is lurking offshore, moving across the open waters of the Gulf tonight at 1,014 millibars. Low pressure is working over south central, bringing again rain from southwest to north and east, and some drier weather will gradually settle in tonight. Expect partial clearing for many, but that could also cool it down enough without drying it out fast enough for a little bit of fog in the region. So don't be surprised to see some lowered visibilities in the region on the back side of this wave of low pressure. Out across the Aleutians, areas of light rain were seen all the way from Adak to Atka and Dutch Harbor, Unalaska and Nikolsky today, with high pressure sitting closer to the Pribilofs at 1,023 millibars. And remember, there's that other wave of rain working across the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound. That was bringing rain into the Kotzebue Sound region, as well as Norton Sound, Nome, and into places across the interior of the Seward Peninsula. Now, for tonight, high pressure should settle up around the Capes, around southwestern Alaska, 1,021 millibars there. The front across the Gulf looks like it's going to fall apart fairly quickly. And we've still got a trough of low pressure here, so as that moves eastward, probably going to be some light rain and drizzle brought into southeast with that. So plan for some wetter weather developing there. For south central, we still expect a few areas of light rainfall. A lot of things have improved across the Cook Inlet region already today. Around the Copper River Basin and north of the Alaska Range, expect some light rainfall there. Now, if you're checking the radar for south central and out around Kenai and you're going, man, this thing is just not loading, it doesn't work, it says radar is not available, you're right. Parts are in order and the radar is not feeling very good right now. So until we get the parts there and the people there to fix that up, the radar is not going to be a happy camper for a little while. So we apologize for that, and of course, you know, like you, we miss that weather data too, so we would like to get that up and running just as much as you do. But for right now, the Kenai radar is not working. Out across Norton Sound, the frontal boundary is dropping southward slowly, but of course it's running into high pressure just west of Bristol Bay and around the Capes, again at 1,021 millibars. Around the central and eastern chain, areas of light rain, drizzle, and fog should be expected through tonight. On to tomorrow and Wednesday, the midweek day. Showers and thunderstorms around the Alcan border are possible. They should be fairly spotty, and that should be about it. West of that, just showers and clouds. A lot of that will be moving away from south central and the Cook Inlet region and into southeast. Expect a better chance of showers throughout the day. More clouds there, a break in the clouds, and then the next wave of weather is already setting up there. The low pressure system's not terribly strong. Maybe some small crafts with that, but most areas in the central and eastern chain and the Alaska Peninsula are looking at more of a south and southwesterly flow throughout the day. Periods of light rain and fog should be expected. And for Norton Sound, a better chance for showers developing there. Now look up north and you can clearly see the ridge of high pressure that's taking shape here. That's keeping the air fairly dry. There may be some pockets of fog with that. Don't be surprised under that ridge. And some of that could move into the Bering Strait. Out across the west, a few showers there across the central and western Bering. And here is another wave of low pressure south of Kiska and Attu at 1,010 millibars. Again, not very strong, but enough to gather more moisture and another surge of precipitation. Here's a look at Thursday, and notice how the system that was here has now spread out across more parts of the interior, south central, southwest, all the way from Bethel to Bristol Bay and into the central chain. Southeast will start to see a little bit of a break. A focus for rainfall will mainly be in the southern third of the panhandle for Ketchikan, Craig, and Klawock. But north of that, as you get into Petersburg and all the way up to Wrangell and Juneau, Haines, Skagway, and Yakutat, things could be drying out. You may still see some clouds, but it looks like a drier day for Thursday for many parts of southeast. North of that, north of the Yukon, you're looking at high pressure still controlling your weather situation. And it looks like things will be fairly dry, a better chance for some sunshine there. Nome looking at drier weather, Kotzebue as well as Barrow and well, probably Kaktovik. Don't be surprised though to see the fog lurking very close to home, especially if you're out on the coast. Temps today in southeast fairly mild, especially for southern southeast. Back in the mid-50s there all the way into the Dixon entrance. Sitka 61. Haines and Skagway were fairly mild, as well as the capital city. Yakutat today showed 64 degrees around Prince William Sound, mid to upper 50s. Cordova was 57. Montague Island affected by some of the warmer water still lurking in the Gulf. Some very warm sea surface temperatures here. 59 degrees out there at Montague Island, 64 in Anchorage, 62 in Kenai, and 56 out in Homer. It was 59 in Seward. Kodiak showed 61. If you go up the Parks Highway a little bit, Talkeetna was in the upper 60s this afternoon. Fairbanks 72 and 78 there in Northway with Eagle, a cooler 59 degrees. Fairbanks again 72 degrees heading northward. We jump into temperatures that are back in the 50s. Fort Yukon 59, Tanana saw temperatures closer to 60. And north of the Brooks Range, where's the cold air? On the other side of the hill for sure. Look at that, 30s for many across the North Slope. The Arctic coast from Kaktovik at 38 to Point Barrow at 36. Atkasuk was 36 degrees. Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse about 40 degrees today. Kotzebue was showing 56 with Kivalina at 48. Nome 50 degrees. Our friends in St. Lawrence Island about 45. Norton Sound temps in Unalakleet showing 54. Galena a little bit milder today in the upper 50s. Grayling all the way out to Sparivon and east toward Lake Iliamna and south 50s and 60s for most folks there. 53 in Bethel. Out around Bristol Bay, temps back in the mid to upper 60s. As you get into the Alaska Peninsula, we saw Sand Point and many other neighbors there around Cold Bay and False Pass, all in the lower 60s. St. Paul and St. George also in the upper 50s. Unalaska and Dutch Harbor was 57. Adak and Atka both in the mid 50s. And way out in Chemia, all 6 of you, 54 degrees there. Hello from Anchorage. Here's a look at what we're looking at for low temperatures tonight. Mid 50s it looks like for southeastern Alaska. Sitka about 52, Ketchikan and Annette in the upper 50s. South Central upper 40s to about 50 degrees around Cordova and places like Valdez. 53 for Kodiak as you get into the middle Tanana Valley and Fairbanks lower 50s overnight. The North Slope should stay at or even below freezing for a few places. Nome and the Seward Peninsula in the 30s and 40s. Southwest and coastal areas into Bristol Bay, upper 40s should do the trick. Lower 50s for most of the Alaska Peninsula and right about 50 degrees for the Aleutians with highs there tomorrow back in the mid 50s. South Central mid to upper 60s at best. Now remember, it is going to be a little bit cooler following this wake of rainfall. For southeast, upper 50s and lower 60s should be expected. For the middle interior, upper 50s to about 60 degrees or so around Fairbanks, Tanana, Nenana. As you get up toward Fort Yukon, 51 degrees northward toward Arctic Village, 49. Anaktuvik Pass and going over the hill, upper 40s for the daytime high. Point Barrow only 38. Kaktovik has you beat though at 37 degrees for a high on Wednesday. Flying weather, we expect IFR conditions on the north slopes of the Brooks Range and along the Beaufort Seacoast, west of St. Lawrence Island toward the western chain and affecting areas around Seward and southward across the Kenai Peninsula out into the open waters of the Gulf in the morning. Some improvement there during the afternoon. MVFR conditions across some of the higher terrain of southeast, but most low-level conditions should be okay. MVFR lurks across the North Slope and through the lower, middle, and even the upper Yukon Valley. A chance of thunderstorms near the Alcan. And IFR conditions continue south and west of Kodiak Island through the Alaska Peninsula and just about all of the Aleutians tomorrow. Here's your pass conditions then. We expect improvement for Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass throughout the day, starting at IFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions developing throughout the day, and improvement should be noted in Rainy Pass. Windy Pass, though, may hold around MVFR through a good part of the day, so keep that in mind. Same goes for Isabel Pass on Wednesday. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions all day long, but we are going to watch for thunderstorms there. Tanita Pass, probably just south of that, so improvement noted, but not expecting convection in a big way. Portage Pass, VFR conditions are expected there. Chilkoot and White Pass also looking to be MVFR. Freezing levels, well, you would expect a cold bubble of air to drop south and stop at the Brooks Range, and that's exactly what we see here. Levels below 4,000 feet to the north, between 4,000 and 10,000 feet for the interior, and we've got a cool pocket of air across the northern Gulf. That's at or below 8,000 feet. Most of the southeast between 8,000 and 12,000 feet for the daytime tomorrow. Icing potential, stuff's pretty high up there. The moisture is around, but most of that is going to be above 10 to 12,000 feet. Watch for isolated pockets of light rime, of course, in the vicinity of these areas of low pressure, but the big stuff still pretty high up there for general aviation concerns. Jet stream potential shows low pressure working across the areas of eastern Alaska. That's sitting across the eastern Gulf right now, wrapping in winds around 50 to 55 knots. Another trough working across the North Pacific will be our next weather maker, bringing us that next surge of wet weather as we head into the mid to late week. At 9,000 feet, we can see one of those troughs already across western Alaska. Wind speeds there across the interior have picked up to about 20 to 25 knots, all from the southwest, perfect for latching onto moisture and working that in. Out across the Gulf and southeast, wind speeds are up around 20 to 25 knots in many areas. And notice wind speeds are fairly light across the Aleutians, but stronger winds lurk on the south side of low pressure there across the North Pacific. At 3,000 feet, westerlies coming in at 20 to 25 for southeast over the Gulf. Light winds at this level for the interior, and more of a north and easterly flow coming down the Chukchi seacoast around 10 knots or so. Again, all this at 3,000 feet. So turbulence, not expecting a whole lot of trouble tomorrow for the Beaufort seacoast below 4,000 feet south of Craig and Klawock into the Dixon entrance, and out across the eastern chain south of the Pribilofs, all below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather and an update on the sea ice edge in just a few. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me again is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. Thanks again for joining us, Cindy.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Sure thing. And I love saying Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska's National Weather Service because that's not weather. Why is the Tsunami Program part of the National Weather Service?
Well, it's because the Weather Service absolutely rocks at warning people for every kind of, devastating natural hazard.
Mm-hmm. The mission of the Weather Service is to protect life and property. And so how does the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, which is a very unique office, again, within the Weather Service, it's not weather, how do those folks help us protect life and property?
The National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer is a national warning center, and we analyze seismic traces 24/7 all around the world. So when there's an earthquake anywhere on the planet, we see it and analyze it within minutes.
Within minutes, and there's actually a goal to have it under, was it 5 minutes?
If there is a tsunami warning to be issued for continental America, we must get that out, or shoot to get that out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Now that's not something I have ever learned to do, so I know it would be a struggle for me to do that under probably hours, but it is fascinating to watch, and the office is open on a regular basis for tours, right?
Absolutely, come by Friday.
Okay.
Yep, every Friday at 1, 2, and 3 p.m. and they're open public free tours. And it's the most interesting place on the planet. You really should check it out.
Okay, and the office team is made up of people that are earth scientists, not meteorologists or atmospheric scientists. Talk about some of the types of people that work there.
Right, we are out of place in our National Weather Service, but we are geologists, geophysicists, oceanographers. We even have an astrophysicist on board, computer software architects, electronic technicians that are brilliant and innovative. Our software is all written in-house. Our instrumentation is designed in-house. So it's a really, really unique place, and it's just a couple handfuls of people that work there. So
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to get a tsunami alert message is on Twitter.
Right.
And I can follow the Twitter address, and we'll put that up on the screen for you there. But it's usually a very quick message that tells you initially what the magnitude of an earthquake could be and about where its epicenter was. What are some of the other ways that you can get that alert message?
Well, Twitter's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a Twitter account to receive it. So
it
just comes in like an SMS message. But you can also receive it via email, weather radio, of course, the crawler on your television screen, on the internet, Google Alerts.
Right.
Marine radio if you're out in harbors and boats. Actually, marine radio is probably,
yeah, it is a good one.
That's our partnership with the Coast Guard. We're really grateful for that, absolutely. But there's a variety of ways in dissemination.
Okay.
And locally, excuse me, I'm sorry, but locally in the communities, the sirens will go off as well.
Right. So lots of different ways to get that very important message very quickly when that matters to you. One of the ways that the Warning Center practices with communities is a test on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
How does that work?
Thanks for bringing that up. It's a controversial issue, but it's super important to help us warn better and really serve Alaskans. So the week of March 27th, the commemoration of the 1964 event, for that week we have a Tsunami Preparedness Week every year. We like communities to get out and do drills and practice and do everything we can to raise awareness. And part of that is a live code test where we actually issue the warning message live and we activate the emergency alert system, which means sirens go off, the TV crawler happens, and it's a test.
We're doing everything that would normally happen without the real threat of the tsunami, just to practice as much as possible.
Right, and this is a major partnership with the State of Alaska, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Alaska Broadcasters Association. Without the media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the three groups really work tightly together to do our best to warn, educate the public that this is happening so they don't wonder and get scared about it. It has been remarkable what we've learned. I mean, it pretty much breaks somewhere every time, but then we fix it and it gets better. So a quick example is just a few years ago, we used to, when we issued a message, it would activate the entire state. Right? I mean, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, everybody would be in tsunami warning. And so now we can regionalize it to where the actual event is taking place. That's pretty huge.
Right. So identifying points of failure and also points of success and making sure we continue down that successful path so that folks are warned as quickly and accurately as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, to get our communities involved to prep themselves, prep their businesses, prep their tourism, prep their schools, you know, just make this an annual thing they need to be doing.
Right. So as citizens wanting to be prepared, we should be prepared to learn more about that test that's happening usually toward the end of March every year.
Right, and you should be happy that it's happening.
Right.
Instead of upset. Definitely be happy that it's happening.
Right. Just as we test tornado sirens in tornado country, we also have to test the tsunami program as well.
Right, because there isn't enough time. You know, for a local tsunami, the wave will arrive in less than 2 minutes. So it's super important that people know what to do.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for helping us know more about the Tsunami Ready program and the test, and the Tsunami Warning Center is a very unique and very important job in the National Weather Service that is just fascinating to me every time I visit the office. So,
it's the only one for the continent. You really should come check it out.
It's an international effort.
Yes.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you next time. Dave, here's a look at the sea ice edge now, and across the north coast we still see some chunks of ice that are a little bit higher in concentration. The white areas, of course, are 80% concentration or higher. The blue areas anywhere from about 0 to 80, so still going to be some sizable masses of lower concentration ice out there, and a lot of this is still in flux and moving in quite a bit of a away as we go into the next several days here. So we're looking at more of a north and westerly flow right now, so a lot of this still in flux as we go through the remainder of the week. We'll get to the north slope forecast here in just a minute. Let's start in southeast as always. Winds will be out of the south and east across the inner channels, about 15 to 20 tomorrow. Looking at 3 to 4 foot seas on the inside and anywhere from 6 to 7 foot seas across the outer coast. Winds there a little bit more onshore from Cross Sound southward into the Dixon entrance at 15 to 20. More of a southeasterly flow as you get up toward Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather with a 5 foot sea developing tomorrow, so seas are diminishing there. But the winds are shifting to more of a southeasterly direction north of Cross Sound, still holding on to the northwesterlies as you move southward. And a southerly flow continues in Lynn Canal. From Frederick Sound and southward into the Chatham Strait region and Clarence Strait, we're looking at more of a northwesterly flow, about 10 to 15 for your Thursday. For south central, southerlies inside of Cook Inlet at about 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas there. Westerlies coming across the Barrens, light southwesterlies inside of Prince William Sound, and a west and northwesterly flow across the northern Gulf with seas holding around 4 to 5 feet for Wednesday. Now notice some big changes there on Thursday. A northeasterly wind coming down Cook Inlet, 3 to 4 foot seas on the northeasterly flow. A south and southeasterly turn into the Barren Islands and into Kamishak Bay as low pressure approaches once again. Southerlies for Shelikof Strait and easterlies across the northern Gulf. as well as inside of Prince William Sound, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. For Bristol Bay, a southerly flow at 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. Southerlies across the Pacific coast at 20 to 25 with 5 to 7-foot seas there on Wednesday, and that'll all shift to more of a south and southwesterly flow on Thursday. Winds still holding around 20 to 25 for the Pacific coast, 7 to 9 feet. And 3-foot seas there for the Bering Sea coast on that southwesterly flow. That's come up to about 15 knots. For the Aleutians, southerlies across the central and eastern chain, 10 to 20 knots there. Light and variable flow for the central and western Aleutians, and a southeasterly wind west of Kiska, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea on Wednesday. Not much of a change there on Thursday. Seas come up a little bit out in the west, and we're still holding on to southwesterlies around the eastern Aleutians for the Bering Sea coast. But notice all the changes around here. That's because low pressure is working its way out of the chain. So expect kind of a changing day there on Thursday in the Aleutians. For the northern Bering Sea, northeasterlies for St. Lawrence Island, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea. Light and variable winds all the way across the central Bering and into the southwestern coast. Easterly winds a little stronger for the Pribilofs, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea. That shifts to a northeasterly flow, as does most of the other northern communities there in the Bering. 15 knots or so with 3-foot seas in most regions, 4-foot seas for the Pribilofs on Thursday. For the North Slope now, north and westerlies, 15 knots with a 2 to 3-foot sea, and north and easterlies down the Chukchi coast into Kotzebue Sound, 10 to 15 on Wednesday with 3 to 4-foot seas there. Winds come up across the Chukchi coast on Thursday. East and northeasterlies, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea, still holding on the light northerlies outside of Kotzebue Sound, and winds switch around to the other direction across the Beaufort Sea coast all the way to Point Barrow, 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. So all the ice that's going this way is going to start going back the other way as we get into Thursday. Keep that in mind. Things will continue to change. For tonight, we are still watching a flood advisory on the Tanana Valley there. The conditions are improving. Water is receding, but there still could be flooding, and dangerous conditions could still be affecting your trails and roads, so be careful. Turn around, don't drown. Across the higher elevations, rain and snow may mix for the Brooks Range, but expect most areas to see clouds and wet weather and a chance of storms across the Alcan border tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.